Hey there, Aurora Wine Club members. It's Drew Perry here again. I'm going to talk to you guys about what's coming up for your spring club shipment. It's going to be really exciting. This is a lot of wines from the 22 to 23 vintage, all great vintages, so I'm hoping you guys get a chance to see how they are now and then how they age down the line. We have here a very traditional Michigan Pinot Noir. This has all of that fantastic expression of cherry, vanilla, that subtle strawberry and clove. Most of that comes from the vineyard. We're talking all the Dijon clones that we use. So, all those goofy numbers like 777 and 115. Really all that means is these clones were selected specifically to grow in the vineyards that we chose. They are very aromatic, they're light, they're silky, which is really what we come to expect from the Pinot Noirs we've grown in this area. With our aging program for Pinot Noirs, we're always doing French oak, and that's not really anything new for us, but one thing we're going to start transitioning into is actually concrete. This vintage, though, is one of our last that you can get that is going to be 100% French oak Burgundian barrels. So it's going to be a little bit of a dinosaur to some extent, but it'll be worth collecting. I recommend that you drink it now and then maybe save a bottle for another year from now, just to see how it ages. So here we have Pinot Blanc, the lesser known cousin of Pinot Noir. Reality is they're all related. You can actually go into a vineyard as the colors are developing. You'll actually see within Pinot Noir some clusters that are actually white. The reason for that is Pinot Blanc is originally a mutation off of Pinot Noir, which is the most stable of all the Pinot varieties. Now, Pinot Blanc has some delicate nuances to it, much more so than Pinot Noir. Obviously, it's a white wine, so it's a lot less expressive because it's not spending all that time on the skins to get that deep color. But what's really great about Pinot Blanc is actually its acidity. It helps it go with all sorts of different foods, and then it has very subtle aromatics. So the more you keep going back to it, the more it opens up. As it sits and opens up, you'll start to see sides that you never knew were there with Pinot Blanc. It is traditionally not the most aromatic, but it's also probably one of the most interesting in terms of aromatics. It seems like a bit of a contradiction, but I definitely encourage people to really get into Pinot Blanc and see what all is there underneath the surface. And finally, Sauvignon Blanc. So Sauvignon Blanc happens to be one of my favorite wines to drink. I am, generally speaking, more of a dry white wine person. Now, of course, making wine, I find all sorts of different types of wines really interesting. Sauvignon Blanc, to me, it's one of the most challenging to make, but it's also one of the most interesting to just sit with over time. I like to just keep going back to it, see how the aromatics change. I like to see how the flavors change. It's a very complex wine. It tends to be thought of as a little bit more simplistic. People like to just sort of have it with meals and not really think about it. And that's just because of all those dynamic, interesting aromatics that it has. Everything from sort of like a kiwi, underripe melon, you have some lemongrass in there, and then you start to get all these citrus notes that pop up. So, I recommend just sitting with this wine, seeing how it opens up, maybe have it with some foods and get creative with it. Don't just think about the typical dishes. I have nothing else to say.